I always thought betrayal was something that happened in movies, not in real life, not to people like me. For 8 years, I believed I had the perfect life, a loving wife, a successful career, and a best friend who felt more like a brother. But one random Tuesday night changed everything. Because that night, I walked into my own house and saw something I can never forget. My wife and my best friend together. And what I did next completely destroyed both of their lives. My name is Daniel. I'm 32 years old, and until last year, I believed my life was basically perfect. I work as a software engineer in Seattle. The job pays well, the hours are decent, and I genuinely enjoy what I do. But the best part of my life wasn't my job. It was my wife, Emily. Emily and I met back in college. She was studying psychology while I was drowning in computer science assignments. Somehow, she managed to make the most stressful years of my life feel exciting. Emily had this laugh that could light up an entire room. She was the kind of person who remembered everyone's birthday, who brought cookies to neighbors, who always knew exactly what to say when someone felt down. When we graduated, we moved in together. 3 years later, I proposed. She said yes before I even finished the sentence. And honestly, those first years of marriage were amazing. We traveled together. We built our careers together. We bought our first house together. It felt like everything was going exactly the way life was supposed to. But there was another important person in my life. My best friend, Ryan. Ryan and I had been friends since high school. We met during sophomore year when we both got detention for skipping class. And somehow, that detention turned into a 15-year friendship. Ryan was the kind of guy everyone liked. Confident, funny, charismatic. He worked in sales and always seemed to be doing well financially. Ryan was also the guy who stood next to me as my best man on my wedding day. He gave a speech about how he had watched Emily and me grow together and how lucky I was to marry someone like her. Everyone laughed. Everyone clapped. And I remember looking at both of them that night feeling incredibly grateful. Because in my mind, those were the two people I trusted more than anyone else in the world. About 6 months before everything fell apart, I started noticing small things. At first, I ignored them. Emily started spending more time on her phone. Whenever I walked into the room, she'd quickly lock the screen. I didn't think much of it initially. Everyone values their privacy. But then something else started happening. Ryan began visiting more often. At first, it seemed normal. He'd come over to watch football games or grab dinner with us. But slowly, it started feeling different. Sometimes Ryan would come over when I wasn't even home. Emily would mention it casually. "Oh, Ryan stopped by earlier." I remember asking once, half joking, "Am I being replaced?" She laughed. "Don't be ridiculous. He just needed advice about something." And honestly, I believed her. Because why wouldn't I? Ryan was my best friend. Emily was my wife. The idea that something inappropriate could happen between them never even crossed my mind. But looking back now, the signs were everywhere. Emily started dressing differently. Ryan suddenly laughed a little too hard at her jokes. Sometimes when the three of us were in the same room, there would be these awkward pauses. Like conversations had suddenly stopped the moment I walked in. But again, I ignored it. Because sometimes the truth is so painful, your brain refuses to see it. Then came the night that changed everything. It was a Tuesday. Nothing special about that day. I had stayed late at work finishing a project deadline. Around 9 p.m. I finally packed up and drove home. Seattle was raining as usual. The streets were quiet. When I pulled into my driveway, I noticed something strange. Ryan's car was parked outside my house. That wasn't completely unusual, but Emily hadn't mentioned he was coming over. I figured maybe they were just hanging out. So I grabbed my bag and walked up to the front door. The house was quiet. Too quiet. No TV. No music. Just silence. Then I heard something upstairs. Voices. At first they were muffled, but I could clearly hear laughter. Ryan's voice. Emily's voice. And then, something else. A sound that instantly made my stomach drop. I walked slowly up the stairs. My heart was beating faster and faster with every step. Part of me wanted to stop. Part of me already knew what I was about to see. But I kept going. When I reached the bedroom door, it was slightly open. Just enough for me to see inside. And in that moment, my entire world shattered. Because there they were. My wife. And my best friend. In my bed. Together. For a few seconds, I couldn't move. My brain refused to process what my eyes were seeing. Emily noticed me first. Her face instantly turned pale. "Daniel." Ryan jumped up so fast, he almost fell off the bed. The room exploded into chaos. Emily grabbed the blanket. Ryan started panicking, but I just stood there, completely silent. Because when something like that happens, your mind doesn't react the way you think it will. I wasn't screaming. I wasn't angry. I was just numb. It felt like my entire body had shut down. Ryan tried to speak. "Bro, listen, this isn't what it looks like." That sentence. That stupid sentence. I remember thinking, what else could it possibly look like? I slowly looked around the room. My bedroom. The house I had worked years to afford. The bed Emily and I had picked together. And now, it felt like none of it belonged to me anymore. Emily started crying. "Daniel, please, let me explain." Explain what? How long it had been happening. How many times they had laughed behind my back. How many nights they sat at our dinner table pretending everything was normal. I didn't ask. Instead, I turned around and walked out of the room. Ryan followed me down the stairs. "Dude, please talk to me." I stopped at the front door. For the first time since walking in, I finally spoke. "Get out of my house." My voice sounded strange. Cold. Ryan tried again. "It just happened. It didn't mean anything." That sentence made something inside me snap. I turned around slowly and looked him directly in the eyes. "You have 5 seconds." He didn't argue after that. Ryan grabbed his jacket and left. The door slammed behind him, and suddenly, the house felt unbearably quiet. Emily came downstairs a few minutes later. Her eyes were red. She looked terrified. I sat at the kitchen table staring at nothing. She sat across from me. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, she whispered, "I'm sorry." Those 2 words felt meaningless. I asked the question I had been avoiding. "How long?" Emily hesitated, and that hesitation told me everything. For months. For months. For months of lies. For months of pretending everything was normal. For months of my best friend sitting across from me at dinner while secretly sleeping with my wife. I felt sick. "How did it start?" Emily wiped her tears. "He came over one day when you were at work. We were talking, and it just happened." Again with that phrase. It just happened. Like cheating was some kind of accident. Like people accidentally fall into bed together. I laughed. Not because anything was funny, but because the situation was so absurd. "Do you love him?" Emily immediately shook her head. "No, it was a mistake." But something about the way she said it felt wrong. Like she wasn't telling the entire truth. "Does he love you?" Emily stayed silent. And silence can sometimes say more than words ever could. That was the moment I realized something horrifying. This wasn't just a one-time mistake. This was something deeper. Something that had been building behind my back for months. But the worst part wasn't the cheating. It was the betrayal. Ryan wasn't just some random guy. He was my best friend. The guy who helped me move into this house. The guy who stood beside me at my wedding. The guy who once told me, "I'd never hurt you, man. You're like family." I remember looking at Emily and asking one final question. Did anyone else know? She hesitated again. That hesitation felt like another knife in my chest. Some of our friends suspected. Of course they did. People always notice things. They see the looks. They see the tension. They see the way 2 people behave when they think no one is paying attention. Which means, there were probably people in my life who knew, and said nothing. I stood up from the table. Emily looked scared. "Where are you going?" I grabbed my car keys. "For a drive." I needed air. I needed space. Because if I stayed in that house any longer, I might completely lose control. As I drove through the empty streets that night, one thought kept repeating in my mind. They didn't just betray me. They humiliated me. And humiliation is something I never forget. Around midnight, I parked near a lake outside the city. The rain had stopped. The water was perfectly still. I sat in the car thinking about everything that had happened. I thought about my marriage. I thought about my friendship with Ryan. And I thought about the last 8 years of my life. Then something strange happened. Instead of feeling sad, I started feeling calm. Because once the shock fades, something else replaces it. Clarity. And in that moment I realized something. Emily and Ryan thought they could betray me and walk away without consequences. They thought I would just be another guy who quietly accepted it. They were wrong. Very wrong. Because that night, I started planning something. Not violent. Not illegal. But something far worse. Something that would make both of them regret ever betraying me. And the best part? They had absolutely no idea what was coming. The next morning, everything felt strangely normal. Sunlight came through the windows. Birds were outside. But inside my head, everything had changed. Emily was already awake when I came downstairs. She looked like she hadn't slept all night. Her eyes were swollen from crying. "Daniel, can we talk?" I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat down at the kitchen table. Talk about what? About us. That word felt strange now. Us. Because after what I saw last night, there was no us anymore. But I didn't say that. Instead, I calmly asked another question. "Is it over between you and Ryan?" Emily nodded quickly. "Yes." It meant nothing. Again with that phrase. It meant nothing. I looked at her carefully. People often think revenge starts with anger. But the most effective revenge starts with patience. So instead of yelling, instead of packing my bags, I said something that completely shocked her. "Okay." Emily blinked. "Okay." "Yes." Her confusion was obvious. She expected rage. She expected screaming. Maybe even divorce papers. But calmness? That terrified her more. "What does that mean?" she asked. "It means we'll figure things out." Emily suddenly started crying again. "I promise I'll do anything to fix this." I nodded slowly. But inside my mind, something else was happening. Because the truth was, I had no intention of fixing anything. That afternoon, Emily left for work. The moment the front door closed, I grabbed her laptop. I knew the password. We had always trusted each other with everything. Funny how trust works like that. It's the easiest thing in the world to give, and the hardest thing in the world to rebuild. I opened her messages, and what I found made my stomach twist. There were hundreds of texts between her and Ryan. Hundreds. Scrolling through them felt like watching my own humiliation play out in real time. Flirty messages, inside jokes, plans to meet when I wasn't home. But then I saw something worse. A message from Ryan sent just 2 days earlier. "Does Daniel suspect anything?" Emily replied. "No. He trusts us completely." I had to stop reading for a moment, because that sentence hit harder than anything else. He trusts us completely. They weren't just cheating. They were laughing about it. There were photos too. Selfies of them together. Pictures taken inside my house. Inside my living room. Inside my kitchen. The same house where I had welcomed Ryan as family for years. That was the moment my revenge plan became crystal clear. Because suddenly, I had evidence. Lots of it. Screenshots. Photos. Messages. More than enough to destroy both of their reputations if I wanted to. But simply exposing them online wouldn't be satisfying enough. No. If I was going to do this, I was going to do it properly. Ryan's mistake. Later that evening, Ryan texted me. "Bro, can we talk?" The audacity was unbelievable. After everything, he still had the nerve to act like we were friends. I replied with one word. "Sure." 5 minutes later, my phone rang. Ryan sounded nervous. "Listen, man, about last night." I interrupted him. "It's fine." There was silence on the other end. "Wait, really?" "Yeah. People make mistakes." Ryan sounded relieved. "I swear I never meant for this to happen." "Of course you didn't. Nobody ever means for betrayal to happen. It just magically appears, right?" I kept my voice calm. "Let's grab a drink sometime this week." Ryan hesitated. "You sure?" "Yeah. We're still friends." Ryan laughed awkwardly. "Man, I thought you were going to kill me." I smiled while holding the phone. Not because anything was funny, but because Ryan had absolutely no idea what was coming. "Don't worry about it," I said. "We're good." When the call ended, I opened my laptop again. Step 1 of my plan was already complete. Because now Ryan believed everything was fine. And when people think they're safe, that's when they make the biggest mistakes. The perfect opportunity. 3 days later, Ryan invited me to his birthday party. Normally I would have said no. But this time, I accepted immediately. Because the moment I heard about the party, I realized something. Ryan was planning a big celebration. Dozens of our mutual friends would be there. Co-workers, friends, even some family members. Which meant one thing. A large audience. And sometimes, the best revenge isn't private. Sometimes, it's public. Preparing the trap. Over the next few days, I carefully prepared everything. I saved every screenshot, every message, every photo. Then I created a simple presentation on my laptop. Nothing dramatic. Just proof. Clear, undeniable proof. The kind that makes it impossible for anyone to deny the truth. Meanwhile, Emily believed we were slowly repairing our relationship. She started cooking dinner again. She tried being extra affectionate. But every time she smiled at me, I remembered those messages. He trusts us completely. And every time I remembered that sentence, my resolve became stronger. Because betrayal deserves consequences. And in just a few days, both of them were about to learn that the hard way. The night of the party. Ryan's birthday party was on Saturday night. His house was already full when I arrived. Music was playing. People were laughing. Drinks were everywhere. Ryan greeted me at the door like nothing had happened. "Daniel, glad you made it." He even pulled me into a hug. I hugged him back. Because sometimes, the final step of revenge requires a little acting. And tonight, I was ready to perform. What Ryan didn't know, what Emily didn't know, what nobody in that room knew, was that in just a few minutes, their entire secret was about to explode. In front of everyone. The public exposure. Ryan's house was louder than usual that night. Music blasted through the living room. People were laughing, drinking, talking. It looked like the perfect birthday party. And honestly, Ryan looked happier than ever. He moved around the room, greeting everyone, telling jokes, acting like the center of attention. Emily arrived about 20 minutes after me. The moment she walked in, our eyes met. She gave me a nervous smile. I smiled back. Because tonight, everything was about to change. The perfect moment. About an hour into the party, Ryan stood up in the middle of the living room holding a drink. "All right, everyone," he shouted. People slowly got quiet. "I just want to thank all of you for coming tonight." Everyone clapped. Ryan continued talking. He thanked his coworkers. He thanked his family. Then he looked directly at me. "And I especially want to thank my best friend Daniel." People turned toward me. Ryan raised his glass. "This guy has been my brother for almost 15 years. Everyone applauded. I stood up and smiled. But inside my mind, I was thinking something completely different. 15 years of friendship, destroyed in 4 months. Ryan continued talking. "No matter what happens in life, I know this guy always has my back." That sentence almost made me laugh. Because in just a few seconds, everyone in that room was about to learn the truth. Ryan raised his glass again. "To friendship." Everyone cheered. And that was my cue. The speech. Slowly walked toward the center of the room. "Actually, Ryan," I said, "I'd like to say something too." Ryan smiled. "Of course, man." Someone handed me a drink. But I didn't touch it. Instead, I placed my laptop on the table nearby. People looked curious. Emily suddenly looked nervous. She knew something was wrong. But it was already too late. I cleared my throat. "Ryan is right about one thing," I said. "We've been friends for 15 years. Everyone nodded. 15 years of trust. I paused. And unfortunately, 4 months of betrayal. The room instantly went silent. Ryan frowned. "What are you talking about?" I turned my laptop toward the TV screen in the living room. Ryan had connected it earlier for music and videos. Perfect. The screen lit up. And the first screenshot appeared. A message from Ryan to Emily. "Is Daniel home yet?" Another screenshot appeared. Emily's reply. "No. We still have time." The room went completely quiet. Someone in the back whispered, "What the hell?" Ryan's face turned pale. "Daniel, stop." But I kept going. Screenshot after screenshot appeared on the screen. Flirty messages. Photos. Proof. Clear and undeniable. Then the final image appeared. A selfie of Ryan and Emily together. Taken in my living room. People started murmuring. Shock spread through the entire room. Emily looked like she might collapse. Ryan tried to unplug the laptop. "Turn it off," he shouted. But the damage was already done. Everyone had seen it. Everything. The fallout. Ryan's co-workers stared at him in disbelief. One of his friends shook his head. "Dude, that's messed up." Emily began crying. "Daniel, please stop." But I wasn't finished yet. I turned to the crowd. Ryan didn't just betray me. He slept with my wife for 4 months. Gasps filled the room. Some people looked angry. Others looked disgusted. Ryan tried to speak again. "It wasn't like that." I looked directly at him. "Really?" I clicked one final screenshot. The message appeared on the screen. Ryan's text to Emily. "Does Daniel suspect anything?" Emily's reply. "No. He trusts us completely." The room went completely silent. Because in that moment, everyone understood exactly what kind of people they were dealing with. Ryan looked like he wanted to disappear. Emily was crying uncontrollably. And for the first time since this entire nightmare began, I finally felt something. Relief. Because the truth was finally out. No lies. No secrets. Just reality. I closed the laptop. Then I looked at Ryan one last time. "Happy birthday." And with that, I walked out of the house, leaving behind absolute chaos. Aftermath. As I walked to my car, I could still hear shouting coming from inside the house. People arguing, doors slamming, Ryan yelling, Emily crying. But none of it mattered anymore, because the two people who betrayed me had just been exposed in front of everyone they knew. And the best part? I didn't have to scream. I didn't have to fight. All I had to do was show the truth. And sometimes, the truth is the most brutal revenge of all. The aftermath. When I got into my car that night, my hands were shaking. Not from anger, not from fear, but from adrenaline. Because exposing them like that, in front of everyone, was something I had imagined dozens of times. But actually doing it, that felt completely different. I sat in the car for a few minutes staring at the steering wheel. Then my phone started buzzing. Message after message after message. Most of them were from people who had been at the party. Dude, I had no idea. That was insane. I'm sorry that happened to you. But two messages stood out. The first one was from Ryan. Daniel, you ruined my life. I stared at the screen for a moment. Then I laughed quietly. Ruined his life? He had been sleeping with my wife for 4 months. But somehow, I was the villain. I didn't reply. The second message was from Emily. Please come home so we can talk. Home. That word didn't mean anything anymore, because the place that used to feel safe no longer existed. The truth about Ryan. Over the next few days, things got even worse for Ryan. Word spreads fast in social circles, especially when betrayal is involved. Several of Ryan's friends stopped talking to him. One of his co-workers who had been at the party told others at work what happened. Apparently his boss heard about it too. And when people start questioning your character, that can damage more than just your reputation. Ryan tried calling me multiple times. I ignored every single call, because there was nothing left to say. Some friendships end slowly, but ours ended in one night. Emily's reality. Emily stayed at the house for a few days, but eventually she moved out and stayed with her sister. She kept texting me, long emotional messages, apologies, regret, promises that she would do anything to fix things. But the truth was, there was nothing left to fix, because trust is like glass. Once it shatters, you can try to glue it back together, but the cracks will always remain. After 2 weeks, I finally met Emily one last time. We sat in a quiet coffee shop. Neither of us spoke for a while. Then she asked the question she had been avoiding. Is there any chance we can save our marriage? I looked at her, and for the first time in weeks, I felt calm. Not angry, not sad, just certain. No. Emily started crying. I made the biggest mistake of my life. Maybe she had. But some mistakes have permanent consequences. We filed for divorce shortly after that. Ryan's final attempt. About a month later, Ryan showed up at my office. I was surprised security even let him in. He looked terrible. Dark circles under his eyes. Wrinkled clothes. Like someone who hadn't slept properly in weeks. Can we talk? He asked. I sighed. 5 minutes. We sat in a nearby cafe. Ryan stared at the table. I never thought things would go this far. I didn't respond. Then he said something that almost made me laugh. You didn't have to humiliate us like that. Humiliate. That word again. I leaned forward slightly. You humiliated yourself. Ryan stayed silent. Then he asked one final question. Do you think we'll ever be friends again? The answer was obvious. No. Not now. Not ever. Ryan nodded slowly. Then he stood up and walked away. And just like that, 15 years of friendship ended forever. Moving on. 6 months later, my life looks completely different. The divorce is finalized. I sold the house, and I moved to a new apartment across the city. At first it felt lonely, but over time, something unexpected happened. Peace. No lies. No betrayal. No fake friendships. Just a clean slate. Sometimes people ask me if I regret exposing Ryan and Emily like that. And honestly, no. Because betrayal thrives in secrecy. And the moment the truth comes out, the power shifts. Ryan and Emily made their choices. I simply revealed them. And in the end, that was enough. Final thoughts. Looking back now, I realized something important. Trust is one of the most valuable things you can give someone. But it's also one of the easiest things to destroy. Ryan destroyed 15 years of friendship. Emily destroyed 8 years of marriage. And all it took was 4 months of lies. But despite everything that happened, I learned something from the experience. Sometimes the worst betrayals in life lead you to the strongest version of yourself. And if there's one thing I know for sure now, it's this. The people who betray you don't deserve a place in your future. And that's where the story ends. 8 years of marriage, 15 years of friendship, destroyed in just 4 months of lies. But here's the real question. What would you have done in this situation? Would you have exposed them the same way, or handled it differently? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoy these crazy real-life stories from Reddit, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next one. Trust me, the next story is even crazier. Thanks for watching.